Definitely, Sharul. It's so nice of you to invite me onto this discussion, and
It's
I'm
a
honored to be
pleasure.
part of
Yeah.
being part of your YouTube community. So it's glad that we share the same kind of interest in spaces related to technology, especially. So happy to discuss this with you. And yes, I'm quite enthusiastic about blockchain technologies and everything that's happening in the Web3 space, which not only covers blockchain but also metaverse and few other technologies which are actually helping shape up the future. At Nazwi Solutions, we'll do multiple kind of activities. From our main focus is to bring in innovation in the supply chain space. So we are looking at inventory and asset management in the distributed space. Apart from that, we are also looking at targeting the metaverse domain. So those are
Interesting.
some of the projects which are underway. So from a technology space, we are looking at harnessing blockchain further to improve better asset management, including better inventory tracking. So we are trying to
Okay.
look at that perspective. I'm looking at Metaverse as an immersive experience to get a better perspective and visibility into the inventory. So we're
Oh,
trying to bridge that together.
that's fantastic. And would you also share with us that how India currently is doing in this space in metaverse space?
So from a Metaverse perspective, it's an interesting story in India. India
Interesting.
so far has been like the back end of doing the work that is required for Metaverse. So
Wow.
mostly like an unsung heroes, where the studios have been in the West or in other developed countries, and India has been on the back end side developing the content and creating the environments and the characters required for the Metaverse space. But what we are seeing now is India is also moving up front and trying to create and launch their own metaverse spaces. So that's an interesting shift that is taking place. I think the best thing about India right now is we're able to play two sides of the card, wherein we are participating in as a service provider and as well as participating in the product delivery.
How metaverse and various other technologies like NFTs and will contribute towards a Web3 space. So,
It is an
yeah,
interesting question, especially it gets interesting because when we start getting into Web3, that's
yeah.
where we are going to get into an amalgamation of various technologies that have come into play. So I wanted to share a slide deck as well, wherein I just wanted to talk you through what the Web3 actually essentially means. So far, when we have looked at the evolution of the internet, we have been used to consuming information which is available on the web pages. That
Yeah.
was the Web 1.0 era. Then we moved into a higher density of information wherein there were two-way exchanges between the participants, the respondents, and the kind of content also evolved in terms of just not being confined to web pages. We were looking at video-based content through YouTube and social media experiences through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. So that evolution actually changed the way the information was being dispersed. And overall, when you look at all of this information, it was well documented, like a document kind of structure. Now, when we're looking at Web3, at the heart of Web3, we have got something called as semantic web. And the basic premise of semantic web is that the information should be easily understandable by anybody. And when I say anybody here, just not talking about humans, but also machines. We know that machines are playing a very important role when it comes to gathering and serving information to us. We have seen the evolution of ChatGPT, which has taken the internet by storm, and the kind of content it can generate. So at the back end of it, it's just essentially a bot which is able to get us some information, consolidate it, and make it understand it better so that it can serve us better. So in the Web3 space, we are going to look at information wherein machines can evolve to better understand the information. And the information itself will be documented in such a way that it can be understandable both by humans and by machine. And it will not be associated with one platform. Like it will be, for example, we have got Facebook, we have got YouTube, and there are customary formats or proprietary formats which these platforms use. It will not get confined to those. There'll be more generic and open nature of accessing the information. Then the ownership will also change. It will no longer be platform dependent. Rather, the content creator owns the content, they host it, they distribute it, and they get complete control in terms of how the information will be perceived. So that's what the heart of Web 3.0 is. And then on the top of it, we have got something called as smart applications, wherein we look at the blockchain layer coming into place to drive the whole infrastructure. So there's smart contracts, there's distributed autonomous organizations, also called as DAO, which helps to bring in automated nature of operations on the web. Then finally, on the outer layer, the internet that we know today, which is accessible through a browser, catching it through YouTube, or reading on the web, that's going to evolve, and that's where the metaverse comes into perspective. There are different ways to consume metaverse content. You don't necessarily need to put on a head-mounted display, the Oculus kind of a headset.
Yeah.
You can even access it through the web. So there are lots of evolutions that are taking place in that
Right.
space.
Right. So that's another interesting point that you have mentioned, that I think currently the belief system is that in order to access metaverse, we have to use those specific devices that
Right.
are like, for example, Oculus will be mandatory. So that was my understanding too, but you have clarified it through your point that that is certainly not a case, and there will be other ways and processes through which we can access metaverse.
True. And you can imagine the kind
Yeah.
of players. You're not just going to be looking at few players to participate. There are going to be multiple players, and everybody has a stake in this. Everybody can participate in their own way. It's not like, and some of the existing players will get redundant. They just need to evolve in order to adapt to the new Web 3.0 revolution. The interesting aspect is that Gartner, who's been the leader in understanding the industry terms and presenting it out, has come up with something called as a hype cycle, which is applicable
Okay.
to a lot of domains. And the Gartner Web 3.0 hype cycle has got all of this into place. Mostly, as you can see, the players in this whole space is being driven through the blockchain technology. There are different components of blockchain technologies, and they follow their own maturity model. So on this chart, whatever you see on the right hand side in the white spaces, those have evolved and will continue to evolve over a period of time. What you see in the blue shaded one on the left hand side, which is the innovation trigger, now these are the ones which are going through a round of innovation. So I
Okay.
wanted to talk about some of the key aspects in this space rather than the ones which are already evolving, because there are already a lot of players who are in that space and they're trying to gain traction and push the market through. So it will be more advantageous to people who, if you can focus on the innovation triggers so that you can start building products now, which can scale up in the next 2 to 3 years and you're ready to deploy products in that space.
Wow, that's fantastic. This hype cycle is so interesting to see, and especially
Yes.
the cryptocurrency, decentralized applications, and blockchain wallets, they're considered as developed, or at that they have reached their maturity stage. Can we
Yes, they
say
have reached their maturity. Yes,
that?
they have reached their
Mhm.
maturity. It does not mean that they've reached their end of life. It's just that they have more evolved and are in a better shape for mass adoption.
Okay.
In this particular hype cycle from an innovation space, there is another topic of which is here, which is of very close interest to mine, and I've had great interest in it from almost like 2 decades now. I've been constantly following up its evolution. So that's the decentralized autonomous organization, also called as DAO. And I remember that in my earlier years of my career, the idea of implementing DAO was something which was extremely difficult to pull out in an organization. There have been a lot of attempts that were made, but then it was kind of a struggle to get it adopted. What blockchain has done is it has actually brought it in a much simpler form onto the landscape and completely have provided a lot of traction to DAO for faster implementation in an organization. And I think this is definitely going to be a game changer. We are going to look at the way things work from an organization point of view, where the focus is going to get into the niche aspect of an organization. The mundane activities and the typical operational level activities within an organization might all be DAO driven. So, so I think this is going to be a whole new way of working that we will be seeing as we see DAO being implemented in the organizations. So, as enthusiasts and looking at our progression within this life cycle and the career plan, we should be cognizant of this fact as to how DAO can actually bring in that change.
Right. And say the question for you, so the project that you're working on, does it need a DAO support as well?
Not at this point of time,
Okay.
but yes, it is smart contract driven, so it is more of a decentralized application and a
Okay.
smart application. But as of now, we are not incorporating DAO. So
All
what DAO typically does is, yes, it brings in the automation components which are being driven through smart contracts. Along
okay.
with that, it also brings in the voting concept wherein you can decide as to which way the organization should head towards. So so you can bring in those concepts as well. So we are not yet there. We probably that's something that can be looked at in the future
Yeah.
phases.
Int-
The way I look at DAO is more of a philosophy than a technology implementation. Yes,
Okay.
to enable it, you need to have the technology in place. But then, if your organization is designed around the concepts of the DAO, then the way the organization works is completely different. For
Yes.
example, you with the implementation of a DAO, you could be a single person company which is being run by the community, and that changes everything actually, the way the whole organization works. So, adopting that philosophy would make a lot more importance. And in order to assess the better implementation of DAO, you can look at what the organization has been doing with respect to their roadmaps, with respect to involving the community in terms of gathering feedback, in terms of understanding what the community needs and delivering on those guidelines. I think that will be a better way of looking at and measuring the organizations from a DAO point of view. Next is there is something called as decentralized finance, where we have seen
Yeah.
how the protocols have been established which utilizes cryptocurrencies and are built on the blockchain platform. However, one of the major challenges with this was from a regulatory point of view. Government agencies and regulatory bodies were not really keen on adopting DeFi and cryptocurrencies into their space for lots of reasons, more specifically related to anti money laundering laws, AML, and the privacy control in terms of identifying the identity of the individual behind the transactions, basically KYC driven, and few others. So these were the two primary concerns which the regulatory bodies had. So in order to address this, if you get into the innovation trigger, there's a whole new concept that the institutions are all trying to work through called CD5. That is centralized, decentralized finance. So it's basically the marriage of centralized finance. That's the typical way of the way the banking institutions currently work, and marrying that to the way the decentralized finance works in the blockchain world. Now, is this going to be easy? Definitely not, because there's a lot of complexity involved. We are trying to look at bringing in two different mindsets or the thought processes in terms of how these concepts work and bringing them onto a common ground. So CD5 is typically also be referred to as an institutional DeFi, wherein the banking institutions are trying to take advantage of the technology and the evolution. So the two main concerns, especially that will be addressed as part of CD5, would be the KYC and the AML laws, which will help to gain traction in agreement from the regulatory bodies and the government agencies, so that we can happily adopt the DeFi space without any concerns from its usage. Because
Right.
today, a lot of institutions are not able to take advantage of what DeFi brings to the table just because of the regulatory guidelines. So the
Right.
CDFI will help to get over that. And there are a lot of projects which are already underway in Singapore and Switzerland, which are working in this space. One of them is the Guardian project, which is being executed out of Singapore.
Okay.
And there are lots of institutions which are involved as part of that execution. Um, I think I made it very simple, but in when you look at the way you're trying to combine the philosophy of blockchain, which is based on the decentralized concepts, and taking the traditional way of working, which is based on the centralized concepts,
Yeah.
bringing them together is going to be quite a challenging activity. But if you are able
Definitely.
to do that
Yeah.
without getting into a private blockchain or a private network scenario, then that's a win. So the Guardian project that I was talking to you about was the
Yeah.
public blockchain platform that's going to be deployed. And from a technology point of view, what they're trying to do is they've taken Aave, which is one of the popular DeFi platforms, and they've forked um, a version of it and are trying to utilize that. So you can see that the technology already exists. It's just about adopting and building on top of it. So from the Web 3.0 hype cycle, these were the 3 points which are very close to my heart and for which I'm quite upbeat, and I'm looking forward to that. And I just wanted to share that with you. Apart from that, I just wanted to share a perspective in terms of what are we looking at in terms of the future trends in the Web 3.0
Right.
space. So the Web 3.0 space is going to be affecting the way Metaverse will be deployed, the way we will interact with merchandise, which are basically virtual goods, and how we are going to be interacting virtually. So by 2028, the projection is that the Web 3.0 will be valued around $23 billion.
This is
Um,
fantastic to see. And especially the
yeah,
metaverse, the numbers there is unbelievable. Yeah.
unbelievable. And to complicate the matters further, so by the same era, if we consider metaverse, including the hardware providers, the infrastructure providers, then we're looking at $2 trillion valuation for metaverse alone. So,
Incredible.
so that big is the industry. So that's going to be an interesting thing. I think that will be a biggest game changer for both blockchain and what's happening in the DeFi space once
Right.
that comes into play.
That's interesting, Said. And may I also ask you that when did your journey into blockchain started?
Yes, so it's been an interesting journey of sorts at that time. And what was essentially happening was that I was getting more inclined towards the technological aspects of the blockchain. And whenever I got into discussions with people who were around me at that point of time, the discussion actually went into confusion state. And I'll tell you what I mean. So I was talking to somebody about Bitcoin and from a technology point of view, and they were saying like, yes, I invested in Bitcoin, and I'm like, then I got confused. Oh, you are an investor, you're not really inclined, you're not attracted to blockchain technology because of the technology. And I was like, why don't you talk about how you're setting up a mining rig or how you're trying to do something with the Bitcoin and adding value to it? And the person was more interested in terms of how I have taken Bitcoin and I'm putting it as my savings,
Right.
which is also a right thing. It's just that
Yeah.
the way people looked at blockchain technology was completely different. They were looking at it as an investment vehicle, and then
True.
they were technologists.
Same. My journey
Yeah.
started almost the same, and then I
Okay.
got further into oh my God, there is so much involved in it. It's a future of technology. It's just starting up. So almost I can resemble with what you have just mentioned. Sorry, say,
Yeah.
and you shall
No,
continue.
not at all. I
Yeah.
mean, it's good to know that. So we share the similar thought process, and I think that's the reason why we are able to connect and talk about all of this so openly. And the technology on the blockchain, as you would have also noticed, Charul, it's like super amazing, right? It's just like it's not like if you learn a page of it, you got it completely. There are so many different facets to it, and going through all of them, looking at the way it can be adopted, integrated. I think that is what is mind blowing with what you can do from a blockchain technology point of view. Imagine the kind of participation we are looking at. It's not like it's going to be a closed door where people have to struggle, fight each other. No, it's going to be open for all. Everybody can jump in, everybody can participate, and everybody can win. It's just about getting your facts and the ideas rightly placed. Because what you're also seeing is there are lots of projects which are underway. Some of the projects make sense, some don't. So we have to be cognizant of the fact while we are innovating and trying out interesting and different things, we also want to make sure we are adding value and building something which makes a little more sense than probably what's out there. The good part about participating in the Web 3.0 um, evolution is not
Yeah.
that you just need to know blockchain and then you'll be successful. That's just not the whole thing. Blockchain is one part of the picture. Another part of the picture is that if you are a more of a creative person, then you can come in as a metaverse enthusiast who
All
can
right.
bring in the creativity to come
Yeah.
up with the virtual worlds and integrate it with the blockchain platform. So understanding concepts, basic concepts of blockchain would help, but then the perspective that you bring to the table would be more from a creative point of view and
Right.
integration point of view. Because I think now that's going to be a bigger challenge where we have seen organizations struggle to adopt metaverse as part of their operations and creating a customer experience for their customers. So getting that perspective will definitely be a big advantage. And in the Web 3.0 and the metaverse space, we feel that maybe people are a bit hesitant because of the heavy investment in the technology. But then that's going to change. We're seeing that a lot of people in their early 20s are very happy to participate. People who are on the other end of the spectrum are also looking to participate. So by 2028, looking at 2 billion people participating in the metaverse space and contributing in the Web 3.0. So the young generation is definitely the evangelist of what's happening in the Web 3.0 in the metaverse space. And they also serve as a case study for people to understand how we could actually evolve it further. Because learning by their experiences and their interactions, we could actually build it further. Um, the commerce of around $200 billion in terms of the virtual goods itself. And I'm not talking about physical goods here. These are just digital goods that are going to be transacted within the metaverse space. So the kind of trend that we are seeing in this blockchain space is a lot of youngsters that get jumping into the blockchain technology because of the fascination and the attraction that exists in this
Yeah.
particular technology. And they learn how to develop smart contracts, they're able to understand the concepts, and then they go in about the implementation. But what I would rather recommend instead of just jumping into the technology is get the basic computer science understanding, because the blockchain technology is just not about ability to develop smart contracts
Yeah.
and probably use a couple of blockchain platforms and deploy it. it's a lot more, especially if you're going to talk about it from an innovation point of view. So it might add a lot more value if you can actually look at understanding the basic computer science fundamentals from a technology point of view, how things work, and then start learning through understanding the networking capabilities, concepts, distributed way of computing, and then get jumping into the blockchain space, looking at the platforms. The easiest blockchain platform to learn is Bitcoin,
Right.
and use the word easiest with double quotes because it's not really as easy as we think it is. But then among all the blockchain platforms, that's the easiest to adopt. Then we learn about understanding how Ethereum can scale, implement a lot of other functionalities, and that could probably be a journey. And then looking at various use cases that can be adopted.
Right.
And the speed at which the industry is going is pretty fast.
The news is endless, and in order to catch up with this, the trend is can be so hard to keep up with it. Definitely, there is so much happening in this space, and it's going on at the speed of light. So now there are new people who are going to join this space, mainly focusing on digital assets and cryptocurrency. So, what would you recommend to these young people who are jumping into this space?
Yeah, so I think the number one and the most important one I would highly recommend all the new players and the developers when they get into this space is don't look at the money part of it.
Yeah.
The money will come if the project is right.
Sure.
Just make sure that your implementation and the use case that you're trying to address, that's rock solid. That will get you the traction that you need. That will get you the attraction that you need from your VCs and the investors as well.
Right.
So that's the two takeaways that I want the new developers to take in.
Absolutely, Saeed. And you have said it right that don't think about the money. Money will come if the project is right. And
Sure.
any last minute points or knowledge that you would like to share with us before we wrap up?
Yeah, and I think I'd like everybody to just keep innovating and keep trying out something new. Don't be scared. There's no wrong answer at all. There's always the right thing to do. Whether it fails or succeeds, that's a different matter. It's not that important.
Definitely.
Keep trying.
Yes. Great.
And Sharul, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure interacting and sharing my thoughts with you. And thank you for the patience to listen to my thoughts and trying to incorporate it as part of your studies. So